It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment, everyone.
Good moment.
It is a good moment. That is a really good moment. I got super caffeinated this morning, so I'm having an
extra good moment.
Barnet's
high as a kite.
Particularly,
that's good.
Caffeine fueled.
You're extra enthusiastic in this moment.
Yeah, let me sort of clear out my jets.
Yeah,
it's great to be here.
It is great. Always feels good.
It does.
This is home.
I have to say something right from the outset. I don't know whoever who wrote this on our website. If you're driving right now, pull over. so there are some unkind things.
Oh, there's been some interest. Well, you know what people reacted to? The Grand Strategy show.
I love that show.
I do too. It's one of my favorite shows. It drew out a lot of negativity. People who
they
are really committed.
They thought I wasn't taking responsibility for my reality, and I thought that's really interesting. It's teleological. How far back do we want to go?
So look, here's an interesting piece.
Yeah.
It'll be, I think, a really interesting conversation with our guest today is how we treat the critics that show up in our experience. You and I both have sort of said, well, it's a reflection, you know. How do you want to be with what is showing up? Like, is there a way that I can personally not own it in the sense of own it as being valuable feedback, but own it in an empowered way as a reflection of maybe some shadow pieces?
Well, at one level,
it
is valuable feedback because at one level, it generally developmentally is denied behaviors. And then as that gets integrated, there are sort of ratios of wisdom. As that gets integrated, then it becomes a compassionate response. It can be a compassionate response to an awareness of something that exists on the holodeck.
Yes.
On the holodeck. But I love to think about this sort of criticism that we get. I was taught
vicious sometimes.
I was taught some time ago. I don't remember who it was that shared this wisdom with me. They said, be critical or be skeptical.
Be skeptical.
But be critical of your criticism. Be skeptical of your skepticism.
Oh, I love that.
And that was very liberating.
That's fantastic.
But as far as this really intense piece of communication that we got, I'm reminded of another great piece of wisdom that I collected someplace.
Okay.
That is, it's an affront. It's a sin. It's a charged word, but I use it. It's a sin.
Yeah, you've
to
mentioned
give
this before.
offense. It is equally sinful to take offense.
Yes.
So there, I've gotten myself off my own hook.
Yeah. So let me say a couple pieces.
Yeah.
So in moments, I am really pleased with the feedback we get, and even some of it that...
I mean, mostly from your family.
Well, no, this is what I was going to get to, is it feels like sometimes a dysfunctional family. Like I feel sometimes in my own skin, like the folks who are showing up are reflecting back some of the small-mindedness, let's say, of the tribe I come from. That's the part of me that gets triggered. So again, if I go back to the very premise that if I can really own this, and again, not own it as maybe valid or invalid information, that's not really what's critical, but the impact it's having on me and what's triggering in me.
Yes.
Because I know how many of my decisions in my life sort of undermine...
Which one of the ghosts of your past is being triggered.
And how much I've allowed those ghosts of my past or my present in the moment that they're activated to undermine what I'm doing or maybe prohibit me from doing something I really want to do and that sort of thing. Bring on who we got to bring on, because I think he's going to have so much to say about this.
He's already said it. He already knows exactly. He knows exactly what you're... He knew you would say that.
What do we got, Barnet?
Oh, we're really excited today. You can now start driving the car again. You can pull over, get going. I'm really excited. We've got James Van Praagh with us today. Yeah,
awesome.
That is fantastic. For the 2 or 3 people among you who have never heard of James.
No one's never heard of him. Come on.
If you haven't, you will now. James is an author, a producer, a TV personality. He's written many New York best-selling books, including Talking to Heaven. He is the creator and executive producer of a little show called The Ghost Whisperer.
Great show.
Would that I, one time in my career, would have a little show like that.
That's envious.
But that's okay. I know someone who does, and he's here with us.
Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. You are crazy. I love you.
So glad you're with us.
Yeah, exactly. I'm home.
You are home.
Yeah,
you are home.
Crazy is welcome here.
You're no stranger to
feedback
from
your universe.
Criticism is my first name. I mean, I'm the number one target of the Skeptic Society, and everyone who just wants to throw things. I mean, you Google me, and this whole thing that the Skeptic Society has put together about me and Barbara Walters, which is not true, and that I predicted something which actually did happen eventually, but they turned it around, they skewed it, and made it very negative. So anyone that Googles me thinks, oh, he's a fraud, this kind of thing. So, I deal with it every day, but you got to step back, I think. You got to step back. And I think you really got to step back and say, if you have that response from somebody, you're doing something. So number one, you're opening up their mind in a way to look at something different than they ever had before. So any time that we try to change the consciousness or try to change people's points of view, you'll always have some hit back because you're forcing someone to look at something differently, and sometimes people don't want to take that responsibility or they don't want to look at it differently.
And sort of what I was saying, James, is for me, so one of the things, let me back up. I was a professional actor for many years, and I was told that in order to be successful, I had to develop a thick skin, which was diametrically opposed to what made me a decent actor.
Exactly.
Is my sensitivity.
That's right, exactly.
And so obviously that wasn't going to work for me. So I had to begin to relate to what was coming in the most empowered and constructive way possible. Yeah. So it's interesting because Barnet and I talk on this show about at one point in my life, it was very good advice not to take anything personally. But then at a different phase, the phase that I currently am in, it shifts, and the idea is to take everything personally. Not again in terms of taking on the criticism or even taking on the information as true, but really being able to relate to it in a particular way. And that's where I want to take this conversation, because that to me seems like an upgrade, if you will, in operating system versus needing to defend or deflect or diffuse or even ignore. It's like, no, bring it.
Well, I worked for, as you said, the Ghost Whisperer for 5-6 years, and I worked in Hollywood for a long, long time before that. And, I come in there as a spiritual teacher and a counselor and a sensitive and an empath, and I'm very aware of energy. I'm very aware of people, their motivation, what's going on. But even I was shocked at some of the things that they did in Hollywood. I'm like, wow. And it's really, really interesting. But as you know, judgment is fear-based. It's really life is either choices of fear or love, and that's basically it. And I think that people that judge another, it's really fear-based. When someone judges another person, they have to feel better than, because for some reason they feel more secure. And really it is. It's just fear is what it is. It's fear-based. So we got to look at it that way too. As simple as that is, it is true. It comes back down to fear or love.
Fear and love, fear and
protection,
love and growth.
So what about yourself? Are you fearful of? Do you want to be loved by others, or what? Are they not love themselves? They have to project fear to somebody else and do something negative to project something negative, so they feel better about themselves. It's really an interesting dynamic. And when you step back and look at what's going on there, it does all come down to what do they think of? Do they love themselves? Are they fearful? What's going on there? There's a motivation behind the act.
You, of course, were out making waves at a time when this was considered intellectually dubious, to say the least. I mean, we have this love affair with logic and reason that has gone on too long, and this entire exploration and becoming more and more intimate with what goes beyond logic and reason. It's not the boundary of all possibility. It's just the frontier of our control. Is, as you say, it stirs up so much backwash and so much juice. People get so defended. But you were out there very visibly doing that at a time when there was nary a ripple of it in the mass consciousness.
What
in the
possessed
mass media.
you?
Yeah,
Literally,
exactly.
Literally,
You can't say that on this program with this guy.
What possessed me? Yeah, good question. Like Reagan on an Exorcist. I knew when I started doing this work, and really it chose me. I didn't choose it. Because I really moved out to California to be a sitcom writer because I'm funny. And I thought I'd make money as a sitcom writer. And I was really dragged to a medium from England, and she said he talks to dead people. And I thought, what the heck is this? You know, I'm here in California from New York, land of fruit and nuts. Okay, I've heard about this place. Here we go. And I didn't really believe in it. I didn't really believe necessarily in this sort of thing. I wasn't raised that way. And I had a Jewish Catholic background kind of thing. And
wow, man, you were double teamed.
Oh, yeah, there it was. New York
that's
City,
that's like slap down twice.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You got the double whammy, man.
Double whammy, got it all going to me. So what happened was this guy was so really right on about details about members that had passed over, and he recognized in me that I was a medium, and I came back to change the consciousness of the planet. And that's what he said to me, and I said, okay, I've heard about you people in California, land of fruit and nuts, change the consciousness of the planet. And I said, I just want to be a sitcom writer. But he did do some things there. He said some things which was unexplainable how he knew certain things. And it really kind of opened up a part of me in my mind and my consciousness that was there, that I remember when I was a little boy, I used to see spirits all the time and know things about people and see colors and lights around people. And it hit that chord. It's like, oh, I remember this. And what happened after that was I started meditating as much as I could, really just to relax and health reasons and, visualizations. And really, within 2 years' time, I started seeing spirit again, like I did as a kid. And I mean, I'm shortening the story, but it really was an amazing experience. And I started doing readings for coworkers. Okay, and I remember that the energy of those readings and the energy of that was coming through, the love that was coming through from the spirit world to that person was so immense and beyond belief here on this planet. And I thought, wow, there's nothing greater in this world than to prove life after death and to demonstrate the love that the spirit people still have, that life goes on. Life like love can never die. And I thought there's nothing greater. So what I had to do was I gave up a job at Paramount Studios, being paid very well in their syndication department, preparing contracts. And there was a test of my faith. I either do the work for the spirit world or I do work with this in the contract world. And I was being paid really well, a car, insurance, the whole thing. Or do I work with spirit? And I knew that energy was nothing better. So I chose to have faith, and I went really out, blindfolded, if you will, and out to the world. And I never knew how I was going to get paid or anything, but I just had faith.
Okay, I have a great question. I know this, and I'm so sorry if I've cut you off, but
okay.
It's just so important for me. This testing of faith, it seems critical. I don't know if that's true or not.
It's a big one. No,
yeah.
It's a big one.
But the things that we've given over our faith to, right? The explaining, right? I love that, all this stuff was unexplainable. Now, most people, when things are unexplainable, they run for the hills. They run right back to the known because the unknown is just too disorganizing, honestly, right?
Yeah.
So I want to take a moment just to pause because I want to consider this and I want to know your opinion. Is the faith being tested required? The small faith. I mean, the faith in the physical world, reality, and the things we've been taught. It seems like, this is something that seems like it's really critical.
We call it faith. I mean, we call it faith. That's not the way we, as a consensus reality, hold faith is has very little to do with what faith is. But in order to move outside of how we structure our imagination, that imagination needs to come undone. What would you add to that, James?
I would just say, from my experience of being, that we're all souls, right? And I believe that we come back here to learn many, many lessons. And I think that we're tested every single day. And go into our, what do you call it, soul fabric, our soul experience of lifetimes, if you will, that we're tested. I think whether you call it faith or have another label for it, whatever you want to call it, we are totally tested every single day on our truth, if you will. You want to call it truth, you can call that. but I think that's every day we're tested. And we really have to know ourselves really strongly within our heart, not necessarily our head, because we tend to rationalize things, have a critical mind. But if we have to go deep inside our heart and know what's real for us and what's not real for us.
And it seems such a critical lesson of our time, because these rational capacities, as Barnet was kind of alluding to in the beginning of the show, are topping out. For us to think our way through life isn't working so well.
It's not working anymore, is it?
So what is coming online in the collective, and I think you were one of the pioneers in this, is intuitive powers. That this is a capacity, very natural capacity, required to navigate uncertainty. Because if you think you're going to think your way through it, good luck.
That's right.
Yeah, if you think more thinking is the answer. If we think more thinking is the answer to meeting some of the challenges that we face as individuals and as a culture, that's a rough recipe.
Yeah, I call it a no-brainer.
Wow, that is good. That is really good. Talk about a comedy writer.
There you go.
That's really good.
Because, I teach classes. I teach intuitive classes. And it's really, really interesting. Over the 30 years I've been doing this, and I've seen the change in the demographics, too, between used to be all just females, and now it's a lot of males, which is fantastic. But a lot of people, when they get there, they think. They think too much, and they use their brains, the critical mind, because that's how they're programmed. They've come programmed that way. So I really got to reprogram them and say, it's not what you think, it's what you feel. And start taking discussion on what you're feeling first, and use the intuition. Intuition means into the soul. It's the language of the soul. And we really have to honor that and use that more. And the moment people start doing that, wow, they really feel fulfilled in many ways.
We are programmed to take a break for 1 second. We're going to sell some stuff, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about mediumship. I have a quick mediumship story to share with you, James, and dive much more deeply into intuition.
And we'll do that on the other side of the break. So stay with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
We're still here. Is anybody there?
Still with us?
Hello? We're so glad you've stuck with us through those fine messages. We're thrilled to be back here with James Van Praagh. Before we cut away, James, you were talking about mediumship really quickly. About 20 years ago, I took a mediumship class, and it was conducted in my living room. My wife was...
No, more importantly, it was filmed.
It was, yes, but even more importantly, it was filmed for national television. I don't know what possessed me, literally possessed me, but Sandy was in New York, and she was working for a very large company at the time, and they had a very big meeting. And the sole conversation at the meeting was,
what's your husband doing?
Is your husband... What is up with your husband? What is this California thing?
Talking about fruits and nuts, right?
There used to be a show like 2020 called West 57th Street. I think we put it off the air. But I had to duck and cover for a few years after that.
So Barnet is intimately aware of the feedback system. I don't know if yours was as dramatic, but the risk of really...
I can promise you that James was significantly more dramatic.
No, I think that's probably true.
He had a gigantic platform, and people took these things very personally.
Can I just jump in with you guys and just tell you what something happened like about a year ago? 2020 came to my house, and the funny thing is for years I turned them down because I find the best way you can demonstrate what I do is to do it live in front of an audience that's live, because then the editors can't screw around with it.
It's like doing magic tricks on camera.
Exactly. So 2020 promised me for years. I turned them down for years. They finally said to my publisher, listen, we'll do nothing. We'll do it exactly as it happens. They came to my house. They filmed for 2 days, and I must have done about, 20 readings, and I did a demonstration with a lot of people in the audience in this hotel. And it was really, really good. And I'm very self-critical, but it was excellent. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. And I remember there was one reading in particular. This lady's husband came through, and he said that he was in Vegas, and he loved the Five of Hearts, and he used to stay at the table all the time, and she loved him at 2 o'clock in the morning there. And she said, yes, it makes sense. Yes, it did. And you know about the card? She goes, yes. And she had it. I said, it's a tattoo. She goes, yes, I have the tattoo. And she shows the tattoo. Oh, I thought, well, they can't take that out. That's perfect. That's going to be great. Well, they didn't even show that. And they took the point of view of the skeptic, and they completely changed that whole piece around that how much is he charging for a reading, and he can't read the producer. This is after 2 days of shooting. I was going to read the producer because I wasn't going to go there, but they could really manipulate the film, and they did that. And I was like, wow, that's really unfair. Not only to me, of course, but the people that are watching, because I think the consciousness has changed enough that more people are open to these experiences, and they should have forgive my French, the balls, to do it, to show what's real.
Is that a French word?
Yeah, there's a French interpretation of it. I have a similar experience. I was a soap star for a minute, and when in the first few months when my storyline was hot, it was the number one storyline in soaps that I was in, and they sent the publicist sent the Soap Digest and whoever else to do the interviews with me, and I learned very quickly that the questions. I learned very quickly that just what you're saying, that what came out wasn't necessarily what I said, that it was edited and that there was a point of view. And one of the things that was most challenging that year, I was only on for 1 year, but I was on a lot, several times a week, at least our storyline was. And what was very difficult was it wasn't about me. It was the role I was playing. In fact, my entire career as an actor kind of came apart because I became a soap opera star. And everyone was so glad about that. My agent was so glad and said, oh, you're a soap opera star. Even if you end up off of this show, we can get you on another, right? And I kept saying, but I don't want to be a soap opera star. I mean, I don't even like soap operas. And no one was listening to me because all of a sudden they had some place to put me, which is such an analogy for how these grooves of where not only do other people want to fit us, we want to fit ourselves. Like we find a comfort zone. And there's something
about our conditioning.
Well, and yes, and we succumb to all the pressures of other people's projections. I mean, that's a real challenge, just to, take it in again in a constructive way, hear it as a feedback, and have the ability to navigate those murky waters and stay true to something.
So, as a spiritual teacher, James, how do you advise people to dismantle?
What I teach? I teach a lot. I teach many things, but one of the things, of course, integration. And I think my hat is off to both you guys for doing this show and for standing up to be who you are, because so many people, and you got to really honor yourselves, because so many people out there want to fit into what other people want for them instead of standing up for who they truly are. And people don't honor themselves for who they truly are. And that individual voice, like for instance, your show here. I mean, that's an individual voice you have, which can change people's minds. It can open up a certain aspect of their being to look at something very differently than they ever have before. Even if you hit like 2 or 3 people in the audience, you're doing something, And that's why I do the work I do. I'm not here to change the world per se, although the work has, I think, changed the consciousness, changed perspective. But indeed, if I can help to heal a person in this world or several people with my books and so forth, it's worth it, I once had a lady come up to me, several times this has happened, but a woman once came up to me and she said, I was going to commit suicide and I read your book and I didn't do it. Now that to me is worth the whole years of people criticizing me and skeptics and all that, because who cares what they think? I often say what other people think of you is none of your business. And it's really true.
Oh, that's great. I'm filing that under no-brainer.
What other people think of you is none of your business, because no one knows you better than you know yourself. Right? No one knows you better than you know yourself. So if you make other people's reality your reality, then you're not honoring yourself.
So, big question for you. I should have asked this before and not later, much later.
The answer is yes.
See, he's a psych. He already knew that.
Exactly.
He downloaded this whole program before he got here.
Move on to the next question. So,
no.
yes, no, right? Yeah.
I'm being funny.
What dreams may come? How close is that to your experience?
That question. Very funny you asked that question. When they were developing that movie, when Dreams May Come, I actually did a reading for several of the producers on that show, on that movie, and I did.
You did it for me?
Several producers on that movie. I did a reading.
I produced that movie.
Did you?
Yeah.
So there were several people, and I lived in North Hollywood at the time.
Yeah.
And someone came to my house, and there were 2 producers of that movie. So was it you, or was it somebody else?
I didn't know you then.
Right.
It must have been somebody.
Maybe somebody
it was
else.
somebody on our staff that was fact checking us. But
maybe that's what they were doing. Because I remember they were definitely connected with that movie.
But you know what? No one ever told me that. So it could have been the studio.
Oh, okay.
Because they were in a panic.
I thought the movie was. I thought it was pretty accurate as far. I thought the best part of that movie, forgive me now, it was the colors, was the vividness of it, the life of it. I thought that was perfect. Suicide was handled a little bit differently than I would have done it, than what I know from my experience of how suicide is handled, because there is no sense of punishment when you pass over with suicide. It's the sole experience, and there are different reasons why people have suicide. For instance, it might be a brain chemical disorder is very different than somebody whose Google stock went down, they jump out the window. The motivation is always different. And there's always, I find, love on the other side, that there's really a world of pure loving over there, and that will help certain suicides over, depending on the situation, of course. That was the only part of that movie I found that was not, didn't agree with was in alignment with my experience.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. The suicide thing was very upsetting to me as well, very troubling to me. I pushed back on that.
You had to give in a little bit, didn't you?
Well, we had to give in all over the place.
I understand.
All over the place.
Hollywood, I understand.
Yeah, my goodness. But when I look back on it, I am amazed that that film ever got made.
Can I say something, though, in lieu of current circumstances? So what I think many of our audience know, you're working on a film based on a book that Eckhart Tolle wrote called Milton's Secret. It's actually a children's story, and the script is beautiful. But what's interesting, and we've talked about this recently, Barnett, is that, yes, a lot of the pushback is it may not be constructive. Again, it's kind of like the critics we started out with. But also, there is a way, because you have taken the criticism from the people who want to distribute the film and really rework the script in an empowering way. Because the idea, and this is kind of what we were talking about at my kitchen table maybe last week, was that it's just staying in relationship with the feedback, but still staying true to ourselves. So this idea of the tests, right? The faith being tested. And there are sort of two sides to that. One is the challenging part, but also the beautiful synchronicities, things that drop into place, the opportunities that drop into place, if we can stay in relationship with the discomfort. Does that make sense? Because that's, I think...
What say you, James?
Well, I agree with that. I totally agree with that, because I think you have to have your vision is to be there, but you have to be aware that when you enter this type of field, let's say entertainment in this case, that there's always going to be a little pushback, give and take, and you have to. But if your vision remains somewhat true to give out to the public, and I think it will in this case, then fantastic. I remember when I did Ghost Whisperer, and one of the first meetings we had was, CBS said we have to lower her cleavage on the dresses. And I said, excuse me? We got to show more boobs. I said, excuse me? We want the men who drive the trucks and cars to watch the show. And I thought, oh, this is impossible. This is crazy. It's a spiritual show, and here we go. And I, oh, no, here we go. Well, they were right. They were right.
You didn't have to lower her
We lowered the dress.
You could raise her neck.
No, but this is very interesting, because one of the things I've observed in our space, and we have some friends, attractive women who get a lot of traffic, and I think there's something really alluring. This is maybe a totally different conversation. I'm going completely left. But
the phones are already ringing.
But of the permission, right, that comes with spiritual sensibility, I don't know, and the beauty of it. Because, I mean, right now I feel like there's this evolving archetype, this goddess movement, which is really about taking a spiritual trajectory and revisiting sexuality in this other realm. I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but the idea, there's something sensual.
Well, I think it isn't what we're talking about, but I would say what you're going to, which I love, is the sacred feminine.
Yes.
So let's have the sacred feminine. I agree with you. Let's have the sacred feminine. We need that. Mother energy, nurturing energy. We need that. We have to be... Oh, yeah, I work with a lady by the name of Doreen Virtue, an angel lady, of course.
We should book her.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And she's fabulous, and she is the sacred feminine. Yeah. And I think we do need more of that, especially in times which are fear-based or anxiety-ridden in our world. We need the mother figure to say, it's okay, and you have to do this and honor this way and be a certain way. I love that, sacred feminine.
Well, we have such antipathy around it, and so much stuff around it that it's so denied. We've denied the eros, and so it comes out and back at us in the world as this overly charged, dysfunctional, eroticizing of things.
Which is very different.
Which is very different than eros. It's very different than this.
That's right.
This field of this womb of love that we're
well, it's disintegrated. I mean, I think that's something,
It's
James, you said earlier, is that it's about integration.
Yeah.
Right? I think that was something you directly said. So again, this trying to find this writing, if you will, energetically. That we kind of go left and go right, but there is something that wants to unfold through us individually and us collectively. I mean, I believe we're evolving consciousness. I believe that, and
Totally.
I see it playing out, and that doesn't mean there aren't hard rights and hard lefts where we go into a kind of fundamentalism and a kind of doubling down on an old model that may be completely dysfunctional, but it's the best we've known, and that those kind of setbacks are just part of the trajectory.
I agree. And if you don't have the severity, how are you going to know the other side of it?
Yes.
So you have to, to see white, you got to see black.
Yeah, get really familiar with what you don't like so that you can be very clear when what you want comes around to know, oh, that's it.
Yeah. Hey, guys, really quick, just jump in here with this. It was a really interesting thing that happened to me with the Ghost Whisperer. I felt like I was on my own little journey because I was the only spiritual person there. And they started opening up that show, and it was really scary and fear-based and scared the audience. And I was really upset. And what happened was at the end of that show, though, I made sure, I went to the network and I said I wanted to end in a very spiritual, healing way, which every single one of those episodes ends where she brings them into the light. And it is, thank God, it is that way. Because I believe everything is energy. And when you leave your audience with that, you want them to be healed at the end of a show. Anyway, I got really upset about the negativity or the threatening and the hateful, the fear-based stuff in the beginning of the show. And the spirit world said to me, my several guides of mine, I was really angry, and I said, what the heck is this about? I thought this was a spiritual show. And they said, James, look at the bigger picture. When people see this, they'll question life after death, and that's the reason why we wanted this show on.
Yes.
And that's the bigger picture. So we got to look at the bigger picture always.
Yes. So we want to keep focused on the bigger picture without losing sight of the current picture, but focused on the bigger picture. So what is the bigger picture for JVP?
Well, continuing to bring healing to the planet, if you will, and really opening up the doorway. Like you said, it's changed quite a bit. It's much more accepted. Mediumship and psychic phenomena, healing, it's so much more accepted now. It's more, first we had herbal tea, then we had yoga, and now we have psychic or mediumship. It's so it's much more into the mainstream, which is fantastic. So I'm continuing to support people with training classes and just, workshops and doing stuff like that, meditation classes, and just continuing the work,
So we would love to have you again in studio.
Oh, yeah. Next time we have to get you in
Will
here.
you come in studio?
I would love to. Yes, I would love to. You're in California. I'd love to.
We're in California. We're not that far from you. We're in Gold Coast Broadcasting out of Ventura, California.
Oh, I'd be more than happy to.
We'll do that, and then we'll go to the beach.
Okay.
Okay, so where do you... So close your eyes, James. Close your eyes. 16 months down the road, what's the store for Cutting Edge Consciousness?
Well, I think you got to be true with what you're doing. Stay true to it. I feel like you both of you got to be careful. You don't fragment a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you see, you have your own missions as well you want to do, but you got to just stay true to your vision because otherwise it's going to be too fragmented.
Yeah.
So you just got to stay true to it, I think.
That's beautiful advice. Hey, thanks so much for coming and hanging with us.
Much fun.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
so much fun. So much love. So much fun. We can't wait to see you again in studio or around town.
That sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. And for those of you listening, we invite you to stay tuned because
we're going to talk back about James behind his back in 1 second.
We'll be back after these messages. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain. Good fun.
Yeah, really good fun.
He's a fun guy.
Fun, wise, and
love him.
No brainer.
No brainer. That's so great. That's a great line. Expanding intuitive capacities, tuning in, being willing to handle the discomfort of finding our own way and the doubt. One of the things that came up for me is the idea that there is a value to doubt. The idea of, well, don't doubt yourself. Well, I don't think that's good advice. Like the doubt and being like going in head up, eyes wide open. I know that if I step forward into something that has not yet emerged, I'll have to deal with the fears of that unknown. And when I start to, express something that's unique to me, that I'll experience criticism from all the people who've needed me to be a certain way so that they feel comfortable and safe. So there's a contemplative quality in the doubt. Like there's I think there's a thing called contemplative doubt. I come from the Jesuit. I have a Jesuit education, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. And there is this thoughtfulness and this kind of humility that I witness in the Jesuits, who call themselves contemplatives in action. That's what they call themselves. Where there's this kind of healthy doubt. There's let me consider this further. Let me think about this a bit longer. I'm doubting, so I'm not totally resolved, and thoughts about that.
Well, I love the point. It seems to me that every emotion, and doubt is an emotion, it's an energy movement, has both a constrictive aspect experience and a expansive experience. So there is a familiarity that we have. We're much more familiar with the constrictive nature of doubt. It's a habituated response, and it's fostered and promoted in the culture. And we don't have the same kind of experience, the same sort of familiarity with the expansive nature of doubt, what's called a healthy doubt.
Right.
That is some people call it a BS detector.
Right.
It is a quality of discernment.
Yep. Beautiful.
That is comes online, and in some occasions, not all occasions, anything that it becomes overly relied upon, it starts to become problematic. So there are the plus signs and the negative signs in every experience. We can't have any experience that doesn't cut both ways. And the opportunity for us is to become artful in the knowing of that.
That's beautiful.
And to be able to discern and also to become doubtful of our doubt.
That's fantastic, Barnet. I love that. We've said many times that the middle of paradox is the point of power, where we can hold something as true and not true simultaneously without having to feel like we need to choose, which, actually brings me back to something that James brought up, which I think...
Can I add to that
go ahead.
Before you go there? Because that's such a powerful point that you make, the middle of paradox, and that's quite literal. If and track with me for a second, I may be totally off base here, but if two seemingly conflicted paradoxical points, we're stuck in them because they seem to stalemate. They seem to cancel each other out.
Yeah.
If we imagine them as frequencies, because they are, and one is a note and the other one is another note, because they are, the quality, the ability, the talent to be able to enter the space between those notes means that we are now opening to a harmonic that is not the first note, not the second note, and is greater than the sum of the parts of the harmonic between the two. So we are now experiencing the resolution of the paradox.
Yes.
And how that shows up for us in the world is not our business. But it is not simply mix red and mix white and get pink. It is exponentially, infinitely more dimensionally beautiful and magnificent than that, because it is cut with a subconscious desire to lift.
I love it. And the dichotomy between the love and fear gets resolved when we love the fear.
Yeah.
When we can really be okay with the part of us that's scared and overwhelmed and doesn't know what to do and wants people to like us and is doubling down on an old...
We only become panicked, and we only go down the constrictive path of doubt when we are glued to absolutes and guarantees.
There you go.
That's called righteousness.
Loosen your grip on reality.
That's called
I've said
righteousness.
that many
That's
times.
called being overly attached to being right as a direct extension of what has been experienced in the past. And we, again, also in the culture, very often we hear righteousness elevated to a noble quality, as if it was a noble quality. But it is an energy of it's almost a stubbornness. It is. It's so focused on hanging on to the way it was that we don't allow ourselves to be shaken up to become intimate with the way things can be.
Yeah, there's a rigidness in that kind of righteousness, because I do think there's a righteousness which is kind of a love of justice and a love of
that's called a love of justice.
Okay, well, we'll find different words for it. But
you're right. There is a positive expression of righteousness.
Yeah, because we come back to the idea that the middle paradox is the point of power.
Yeah.
And again, that rigidity of I need it to look a certain way is an expression oftentimes of, that inflexibility is just, it's so disorganizing, the consciousness can't handle the complexity. We've sort of identified on this show before that consciousness involves a dynamic complexity. It's the ability to handle dynamic, meaning that things are always changing, and complex, meaning there's layers and layers and layers, and things aren't so,
Now, I know we're going to have people write in saying, oh, you guys are so complicated. Can't it just be simple?
Well, we got that feedback recently.
It doesn't have to be difficult, but it isn't nothing. It doesn't have to be difficult.
Now, we got that feedback recently that someone said our material was too dense, but they love it, and they keep coming back for it.
You're talking to my wife?
Your wife said it was too heady. We had to get in our hearts more.
We're working on that.
Well, we do that through fun. We laugh at ourselves a little bit. But look, I like the density. I mean, that we're trying to, look, everything's in balance. There's moments that are light and fun and simple, and then there's moments where we get a little complex and we dive into, that realm, and that's okay too. And so if people don't like it, they'll tune out. I mean, literally, that's exactly what happens. They're like, okay, I like the first half of the show. Then they got kind of crazy and we're off, Got too esoteric, got too heady maybe, got too, confusing. And so we're out. But, part of, again, let's go back.
But this is where we drop into the love.
This is it. And the thing, too, that what Barnett asked of James Van Praagh is, where do you see cutting edge consciousness? You guys can get too fragmented, but stay the course of what you love. Stay the course of why you do what you do. This show is such an illustration of us staying the course, because there's been behind the scenes what people don't know, and I'm not going to reveal it, but there's just been a million reasons why this show shouldn't still be going on. And the fact that it still is an expression of us just staying true to something that we can feel, even though intellectually it doesn't always make sense.
And we're on at a particular time of the week when nobody's upstairs.
Stop.
The entire executive suite is
empty. If they just forget about us, we'll get another year. Oh, that's not true. But
they love us up there.
Someone loves us. Or that there's something that wants to be expressed, that this is the best portal. This is the best mechanism. And all we have really done is had the faith to stay with that. Enough of us intuitively has known that something wants to be expressed through our relationship, through our friendship, through the dialogue that we choose to have. It's sometimes really not knowing what people think of it and getting lots of mixed messages from our world, our universe, as it were. But that's okay.
I think less about figuring that out.
Good.
I devote so much less energy to figuring that out, to figuring anything out. And more.
What a relief.
And more, it is a relief.
It is.
Less to figuring it out.
What if we don't have to figure this out?
And more to the fun, to the celebration of it, and to the fun of both the doing of it and the being of it.
That's
that's sort of those ratios of energy. For me, my life's work at this point in my life is to move those pieces across the board from figuring things out to celebrating them.
And there are these beautiful, as much as part of the experience is handling the resistance that's showing up in terms of negative feedback or just feedback that could be perceived as negative. It doesn't have to, but that definitely makes the ride harder. Equally, there are these beautiful coincidences and these synchronicities where, something drops in and we go, oh, we're on the right track. I think James would have a lot to say on this. The little taking hints from our
We
universe.
get him back on the phone.
Yeah, so I call that guy. Hopefully he'll listen and he'll, he's an avid Facebook guy. So hopefully when he listens, he'll.
He's such a good guy.
Oh, he's fantastic. I can't wait to get him in the room because again, the energy, his energy is just delightful, and I'm sure in person it's like quadruple what it is.
A very good guy.
Yeah, over a phone line.
Well, this was a very fun show. And went some surprising places, as it always does. And I'm seeing 4 fingers. That's either because you're pouring 2 scotches, or it's a little early in the day for that.
2 doubles.
Or 2 doubles. Or it's because we're not done, and once again, my back is to the clock.
Your back is to the clock. Barnett's going to have to turn around at some point. We're going to have to get a clock that faces him.
We are.
But I kind of like that for you because you can lose track of time, and don't worry, I'll got it. I'll keep track.
One of the great pleasures of my life is to lose track of time.
I love that.
When I lose track of time, especially when I am engaged in something that really lights me up, it really turns me on, and my head goes down and I'm in it, or I'm so completely involved, and then I look up, and it's minutes or hours later. It's the most fun thing. It's the most exhilarating thing to be timeless.
Yeah, there's a metaphor there, is that when I give up tracking and measuring, right? Because that's one of those pieces that pollutes the purity of the love expression, the joy, the fun, the frequency that we're following, that when we try to figure out what the outcome's going to be, or we try to we're watching the clock the whole time, it takes us out of the moment. And so that spontaneous, just free-for-all where we lose track of time is just a beautiful gift. And, James was saying about his own childhood, and that there was something precious in his ability to see beyond the known, the physical world reality, into a realm that others get kind of freaked out about, but for him it was very natural. And that he lost it at a certain point, but then as he gave himself permission and through meditation, whatever, he was able to gain it back. What I would like to gain back more of is that quality, because my kids, they lose. They got that abandonment thing. They go into creative space.
It's passion.
Yeah.
It's passion. An intimate experience of passion is timeless. It takes us out of time. We don't calibrate to time. It's the suspension of the straight line.
I'm raising artists. That's what I understand that I'm doing. And my kids lately, we got this.
I saw their art.
Yeah, well,
we saw the little
the Play-Doh stuff
sandwich that they made.
Yes, he made a sandwich and hot dog.
The funniest thing.
He's so funny.
The hot dog and the sandwich, they're about a quarter of an inch
They're
long.
so small, and he
hot
gets
dog
the little mustard line.
It's got a stripe of mustard across
it. It's fantastic.
And the sandwich is like this teeny
pickles and whatever else.
Yeah, it's got like a little bit of like pink luncheon meat flopping over the edge.
I should put those up again on the internet. Look and they both Antonio and Isabella, they get so consumed. So we got this discount on Play-Doh. We bought all this Play-Doh for cheap, and so we have all this Play-Doh.
The dog will eat it.
Yeah, please don't get me started on what the dog eats. But to watch how consumed they get with the creative moment. It really can be like they can get consumed 4 hours. You saw the line of origami in the living room.
Yeah, beautiful.
They had a book and they started folding, and 4 hours later, that's what happens.
There's no paper left in the house.
No paper, and there's this.
You want to write something, you have to write it across a bird wing.
Yeah, there's this laundry line across our living room with origami pinned to it. We have to say goodbye. But we, of course, invite all of you to come back. We'll be back next week. And join us.
We will be back.
Here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.